Well, hello, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Professional Pricing Society podcast. My name is Terrence, and we have a great conversation ahead of us today as we'll be discussing the importance of democratizing access to better pricing. We have that conversation spearheaded by two very important people, two very special guests with us today. The first of which is Mr. Matt Johnston. He is the founder and CEO of EPIC Conjoint, which is a full-service product pricing and promotion decision-making software solution provider, enabling game-changing B2C and B2B commercial decisions across over 130 markets within 3 business days. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining us today. We also have Rob Ribciuc, who is the managing partner of EBITDA Catalyst. They provide pricing strategy and execution advisory for high-growth brands in the consumer and software SaaS industries with a focus on middle market mission-driven clients. How are you guys doing today?
Great. Looking forward to this.
Good. Awesome. Well, it's a pleasure to have you both. Let's just go ahead and jump right into the discussion. Democratizing access to better pricing. What exactly does that mean to each of you guys?
Well, maybe I could kick off and just share some thoughts. I guess I've had the benefit of being in the hot seat that is the pricing role. I used to head a pricing department for some big telecom companies here in Europe, and back then there were times where you just felt you were flying by the seat of your pants. You were relying purely on transactional data to make future pricing decisions. And as we know, it's a bit like the old investment caveat. Past performance is not an indicator of future. So there was definitely a lot of squeaky bum times back then. But fortunately, I think in the last 5 years, maybe, the amount of investment in pricing solutions has been monumental, and pricing departments now get the benefit of that. In terms of having being able to make quick pricing decisions at the click, virtually at the click of a button, is hugely empowering. It's all credit to the solutions providers who've been innovative in this space and produced the goods.
No, and I would just chime in, Matt. I mean, I think obviously what you and EPIC have done, from a software-driven solutions standpoint, I mean, that's been the recipe for democratizing access in other parts of industry and economy as well. And as pricing has risen in importance and visibility, and especially as we're traversing this period of fairly extraordinary inflation and just pricing centered changes, I think the way I think about it is pricing also can have a social impact, the separation of the haves and have-nots, so to speak. And, there's always been some solutions for, the Fortune 100, Fortune 500, the kinds of people who could, hire very pricey consulting firms, pay for very expensive solutions and so on. And at the other end of the spectrum, we have an entire part of our society, both in terms of firms that may be smaller, mid-market, that haven't historically had access to either the advice or the solutions, even though they do have things to price, right? And then at the very far end of the opposite end of the spectrum, you have a lot of individuals that may not have anything to price. They're net recipients of the price increases that we see, the price decisions that we see. And that might include as far as, even retirees and, the unemployed and so on, that don't even have their own labor to price. So they have nothing to compensate the pricing decisions that are being made, that they, they're just price payers, so to speak, in the economy. And so for me, thinking about the entities that represent these parts of the society, whether it's middle market firms, startups, nonprofits. And when I say nonprofits, at EBITDA Catalyst, we've always tried to do pro bono work for nonprofits that have things to price. Those are the types of entities that represent these traditionally underprivileged when it comes to access to the benefits of pricing parts of the economy. So for me, it's always been important to not just to serve the haves, which all of us do, and we try to be good at, but also think about the other side, the recipients of the consequences of some of those decisions, and how do we keep society vibrant and the economy vibrant by lifting all boats.
So based on what you're saying, this is something that's worth getting excited about, would you say?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, EPIC Conjoint is just kind of emerging from the startup mode, and we've been immersed in startup incubators. And when we first came into this startup community, we noticed it was a huge blind spot. Pricing was a huge blind spot for a lot of startup companies. Arguably it's the most important P in the marketing mix. And what I was finding out was, very often it wasn't until the last minute when it was, ready to hit the launch button that it was, oh my God, what price do we put on this? Oh, we give it away for free and we'll see what happens, see what clients say or whatever. And so it was really scary. So we've actually embarked on a pricing training even amongst the community, the startup communities. We go around the different hubs and enterprise schools, educating people on the importance of getting their pricing right, best practice pricing, tools, skills, and processes. I guess, fortunately, back to my previous point about in the last 5 years, it was huge investment and innovation in pricing software solutions. People now who are starting to take an interest in pricing have kind of leapfrogged. So what we as pricing guys over the last 15, 20 years have taken 15, 20 years to get to this point, they can do it very, very quickly now with all of these pricing solutions that are available. So it's hugely empowering and liberating for the pricing community. And as Robert mentioned, really, and I experienced this myself as leading the pricing teams within the organizations, telecom companies, they're just totally underestimated in terms of the value they bring to commercial decisions. So really, really exciting times for the pricing community and raising the profile of that pricing department. Looking forward to the day when we see chief pricing officer on the board or in the C-suite. I don't think it's too far away.
I couldn't agree more, and I think there's like so many facets to get excited about. I mean, even the knowledge that there is ultimately sort of a synergy or build-up effect from the contributions made in different areas of this problem, right? So it used to be, before I knew Matt and some of the other folks working in this area, when a conversation would turn, for example, with a potential client or to doing more research, you would have this cringing feeling of like, oh my gosh, here comes the budget conversation, and it's potentially going to tank the project, or because it was thoroughly off-putting and inaccessible for all but the very large companies. And so certainly knowing that part of the ecosystem of solutions has more accessible, reliable, excellent solutions out there, and also people we like to work with running those solutions, has made those conversations a lot easier and frankly an option in more client situations. And then further, as I mentioned later, sort of like this trickle down effect, like where is the cutoff? If you start high with the haves and you end up low with the really have-nots, where is the cutoff of people, still benefiting from this? So for us as providers of advisory, rather than necessarily software, we partner with people like Matt for software. That too is extremely important, right? So a startup like Matt was a couple of years ago wouldn't historically have had access to someone to come in and talk at a reasonable cost about what they can do with pricing to be better, right? And so we all see the benefits of those software and startups and smaller businesses making it and contributing in the economy as best they can. And for the advisory side, we try to extend some of our services to smaller entities like that for precisely that reason. And it's exciting to say we don't really say no based on cost, at least for some portion of our work.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, and that's understandable. And forgive me, you may have alluded to this or mentioned this previously, but were there any specific examples or two from your specific firm's work?
Well, what we're seeing now, the challenges facing all companies, from startup to SME, to small cap, mid cap, even the large, household brand names. They're facing this perfect storm where input costs are rising, so profits are getting squeezed, and now with inflation and the pressures that's putting on disposable income, consumers are getting more price conscious and considering arbitrage positions, trading, buying the more the generic store brand products. That's what we're working with some clients and specifically in the FMCG space that are really feeling that pinch. What they're really trying to understand is how much of this exposure, because there's no end in sight. Nobody's talking about this dissipating anytime soon, which is really scary. But they're really trying to understand how much can they pull on that pricing lever to try and alleviate the squeeze on margins. And in conjunction with looking at their cost base and rationalizing. So, helping them understand the price elasticities of their product versus their competitors' products at different customer segment levels. That's critical, and that's what they're really trying to grapple with and get that visibility. So that's a lot of the work we're doing with the big FMCG brands. Sure. At the moment is trying to understand where that headroom is and where that cliff beyond which, if they price it so high that it's just going to demand is just going to fall off a cliff. So yeah, really anxious times.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the example Matt just gave, which is, our brains have been conditioned to, over the last couple of years to think about pricing in terms of always going up, right? Pricing increases, and so on and so forth. But I think some of the work that Matt's doing, helping companies understand, price pack architecture, what is that offering that can still be affordable for the consumers that are squeezed out there. That's really important. And switching to what we do, one of the things I'm very excited about is, we thought about what can we do for those smaller firms, maybe a startup, maybe someone below $5 million in revenue. And, we introduced this kind of packaged offering, which is, a small and medium business pricing power workshop. It's something where we go in for, up to a work day. It's usually a little less because people can only absorb so much pricing talk at the time. And, really, as opposed to, giving some sort of canned deck or something like that, we actually take the time to understand that small business. We run a Google Form survey ahead of time to, think about their specific industry, their specific problems. So, meet them where they're at with some customized advice that we can give in a compressed period of time. together with some of the frameworks and tools that would help them. And, they can have that for a pretty nominal fee that is, in a completely different universe from what, typical work in this space charges. And, it's very interesting. We've been able to serve with that anybody from, smaller couple $1 million in revenue professional services firms to startups inside and outside larger companies. And so, there's clearly a demand for that walk before you run product. And, for many, many businesses who are just looking to get off the ground and do something about pricing in an educated fashion, 80% of the battle is helping them gain that conviction. And sometimes they don't need more than just this, fairly small bite. And if that gets them to conviction and enough information and expertise to take that 80-20 action in their business, that's a fantastic outcome.
Now, I want to get both of y'all's opinions on this next question as well. In your opinion, is democratizing access not cannibalizing higher value business?
Well, just speaking from EPIC Conjoint's perspective, so our USP is rapid conjoint surveys, and very cost-effective rates. So what we're finding is, though, and this was my experience when I used to commission conjoint studies back when I was heading up pricing. You would engage a research agency or a consulting firm. It could take up to 2 to 3 months to do one conjoint, depending on the sector you're in. Arguably, the results are redundant at that point. So, many of these clients have multiple products in multiple markets. Previously, you would only get one shot at a conjoint. You would only, the finance, the CFO would give you, one shot, one budget to run one conjoint study. The risk with that is so many questions were piled into that one conjoint study that, the results were arguably diluted when they were eventually provided. What we've done by democratizing this access to particularly conjoint is we allow companies of all sizes to run conjoints really quickly as and when the business need arises. And that business need could be a new product launch or a new service launch, a price increases, assessing price increases, evaluating a competitor risk, whether they've launched a new product or they've launched a very aggressive promotion. So by enabling them to apply rapid conjoint surveys to a myriad of use cases has really, from our perspective, has opened up so many more revenue streams beyond the typical. It's a new product launch. Let's run a conjoint study that's going to take 2 to 3 months. It costs an absolute fortune. Now we do it within 2 to 3 days. At a fraction of the cost. So, and that message is really sinking in to the point we have clients now purchasing, their multilateral companies purchasing survey packs and really using those all over the world to run quick conjoint studies to answer these critical product pricing promotion questions.
I love that point, and it's actually spot on because sometimes when I was thinking about research studies, conjoint analyses, I think one of the concerns always was because there's a limited amount of questions or variables that you can insert in any one particular study before it becomes too complex or potentially inconclusive. Et cetera. I always had this question in the back of my head, what happens if you need a second or a third to really nail all the angles of what you need? And, like Matt said, before, when both from a timing and a cost standpoint, that would have been a pretty horrible compounding that was terrifying, right? And I think a lot of people who understood that risk stayed away. Whereas now, with some of the work he's doing and others like him, it's a lot more realistic. From our standpoint, the cannibalizing risk. I mean, of course, in pricing, we think about that all the time when we advise our clients. And for example, for us, we're very clear. Of course, our pro bono work is virtually 100% for nonprofits, and we have a selection criteria set for which nonprofits can qualify. And even the small and medium business workshop is clearly delimited to less than $5 million revenue companies, and we basically do only up to 3 of those a quarter. So we put pretty clear limits around how much and for whom that work is doable and who's eligible. And certainly we understand that the hope is that some of these entities grow down the road to actually succeed and become clients in the more sweet spot type of projects that we do with the majority of our time for larger clients.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well explained. Thank you. Now, let me ask you this, knowing that both you guys care deeply about this, how does knowing each other help you balance this against other priorities?
Well, look, I mean, Robert, I really admire what Robert's doing and diverting his valuable time and effort to for pro bono cases with charity work and whatnot. I guess what I like to do in terms of giving back is going to academic institutions. So not so long ago, I was in the Copenhagen Business School, and educating them on the benefits of conjoint analysis and the intricacies that can emerge. But so I do that quite right. I always like to take a step out from behind the desk and kind of go get into academia classrooms and share that knowledge and share my passion for pricing, because I'm fanatical about it being, as I think I said at the start, as the most important P in the marketing mix, and it's so underrated. And anyone coming out with any kind of a business degree or economics degree or any degree who's going into business really needs to be aware of this. So that's how I try and do it, is in an academic context spread, but also, as I said, in the startup communities as well, the incubators and the hubs.
Sure.
As I mentioned, it's a big blind spot for a lot of companies. So I like to see them leveraging those that knowledge and pricing skills that we impart in these lectures and workshops. That's hugely rewarding.
Yeah, and I feel like I mentioned already a couple of different places where kind of knowing Matt and the work he's doing, it makes either easier or more realistic to offer some of this kind of expertise and make it more accessible to entities that historically couldn't afford it and so on. I'd also say, we're social animals, and because so much of pricing is focused on ultimately helping clients be more profitable, financial metrics, financial accomplishment. I think there's comfort and partnership and some degree of kinship in knowing there are other people who care about this other side of the equation, and it's been just lovely knowing Matt and what he's doing, and I think he's powering a lot of ability beyond his own firm for other people to promote smaller companies and the democratizing of this access.
Well, awesome. I want to thank you both for joining us and spearheading this conversation today. Before we depart, would you guys mind sharing with the listeners where they can find more of your material or where they can find any of your resources? Robert, I'll let you go first, and then Matthew.
All right. Well, for us, EBITDAcatalyst.com /SMB, like small, medium business, is where we have information about our small, medium business workshop that I mentioned. And of course, the broader website has information about our pro bono nonprofit. So that's always the first place to start.
Yeah, similarly, EPICConjoint.com. Just click the Let's Meet button. More than happy to have a chat and explore, any pricing questions that people might have, specifically Conjoint. Happy to do that, or on LinkedIn. We have a company website up there, and obviously my personal profile too. So either way, happy to have a chat with anybody.
Okay, I appreciate that. Well, thank you all so much for listening and tuning in. Until next time, we will see you all later. Have a good one.
Thank you, Terrence.
Thanks for having us.